Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Tonight, we're talking about that sound. Snoring coming from your kid's room. Sometimes it's kind of cute, but other times it can be a little worrying. So we're going to figure out what's what. We're heading inside a pediatric sleep lab to find out when that noise is just a noise and when it's a sign of something much more.
So let's just get right to it. The question every parent has probably asked themselves at some point. Your child snores. Maybe it's a tiny little whistle, maybe it's like a freight train, but it's there. So what's the deal? Should you be worried? Is it totally harmless? Or is it actually a clue that something else is going on? Well, that's what we're here to find out.
Okay, so you might be thinking, easy, right? The doctor just takes a quick peek at their tonsils, asks a few questions, and that's that. But, the research, it tells a totally different story. It turns out it is not that simple, not even close.
And really, this quote from a major task force of sleep experts, it gets right to the heart of the problem. They found that a doctor's exam, plus what parents report, the clinical history, just can't reliably tell the difference between simple, harmless snoring and that more serious condition. And that, right there, is the big challenge.
So what is that more serious condition? Well, it's called obstructive sleep apnea, or OSA for short. And this isn't just about the noise. No way. This is a real medical condition where a child's breathing literally stops and starts again and again all night long. Their airway gets blocked up, and these little pauses, they can impact everything from their blood pressure to how they act during the day. It's a big deal.
Okay, so if just looking at a kid doesn't solve the mystery, then what does? Well, this is where doctors call in a specialist. You can think of them like a nighttime detective. And this detective, they've got a very special lab where they do their investigation.
The official fancy name for this investigation is polysomnography. Yeah, it's a mouthful. Let's just call it a PSG. But really, let's stick with that detective idea. A PSG is basically the detective's entire toolkit for a night. It's designed to gather every single clue to figure out exactly what's going on while that child is sleeping.
And when I say thorough, I mean thorough. A PSG isn't just one test. It's like a whole bunch of tests running all at the same time. It's tracking brain waves to see sleep stages, watching airflow to catch every little pause in breathing, checking oxygen levels in the blood. It even records heart rate and body movements. The whole point is to build this complete second-by-second movie of the entire night.
You'll hear the PSG called the gold standard. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot. But what does that actually mean? How do we know we can trust the results? To get that, we kind of have to pull back the curtain and see how scientists figure out if any medical test is any good in the first place.
So in the science world, a good test has to pass two big hurdles. First, is it reliable? If you do it again, do you get pretty much the same result? Is it consistent? And second, is it valid? And this is the big one. Is it accurate? Does it actually measure what it says it's measuring? For the PSG, that question of validity is absolutely key.
So, how did researchers prove the PSG is valid? Well, they attacked it from a few different angles. First, they saw that the results lined up with other health problems. For instance, kids with higher scores for breathing pauses, they also tended to have higher blood pressure. That makes sense. Then they checked what happened after treatment. After a kid had their tonsils out, their score on the test dropped way down. Perfect. That's exactly what you'd hope to see. And finally, there's just the common sense test. If you want to check for breathing problems, measuring airflow seems like a pretty direct way to do it, right? It just makes sense.
So the verdict from the researchers is, yeah, it's legit. The evidence is solid. A PSG isn't just measuring some random blips on a screen. It's accurately spotting real-deal breathing problems and connecting them to actual health issues in kids. So it's not just called the gold standard for fun, it's really earned that title.
Okay, so we know the test works. It's accurate. But when is it really, truly needed? Let's dive into a few situations where the stakes are really high and getting that crystal clear diagnosis is just critical.
Let's start with a really common scenario, obesity. Now, for a lot of kids with sleep apnea, the first-line treatment is taking out their tonsils and adenoids. It's super common. But, and this is a big but, the research shows that for children who are obese, that surgery is often not the magic bullet everyone hopes for.
And get this number. It's pretty shocking. A huge review of a ton of studies found that after the surgery, only 49% of obese children were actually cured of their sleep apnea. 49%. That means for more than half of them, the problem was still there even after they went through surgery.
And that is exactly why a follow-up sleep study can be so vital. Think about it. Without that test, a child's sleep apnea could just keep going, completely missed, and a serious medical condition goes untreated.
That follow-up PSG is really the only way to know for sure. Did the surgery work, or do we need to move on to something else like a CPAP machine? Now, let's look at another really crucial case: children with Down syndrome. The need for a PSG here is, if anything, even more clear. See, these kids are at a really high risk for sleep apnea because of certain physical traits. But here's the wild part. The usual warning signs? They can be almost impossible to see just by looking.
I mean, check out this quote. A study found a poor correlation between what parents thought was happening with their child's sleep and what the PSG actually showed. Just let that sink in. Even the most loving, attentive parent on the planet could completely miss the signs. And that's why having an objective test, something that just gives you the hard data, is so essential for these kids.
And it's not just those two groups. The research points to a bunch of other high-risk kids where a PSG is incredibly important. We're talking about children with certain differences in their face and skull, kids with neuromuscular diseases like Duchenne muscular dystrophy or sickle cell disease. It's even used for babies who've had one of those terrifying, unexplained events where it looked like they stopped breathing. In every single one of these cases, the sleep study gives a level of clarity you just can't get from symptoms alone.
All right, so we've gone through the science, we've looked at some really high-stakes situations. What's the final word here? What's the key takeaway on all this?
Let's boil it all down to a simple 4-step summary. Number 1, snoring can be a sign of a really serious condition, obstructive sleep apnea. Number 2, just looking at a kid or checking their tonsils, not a reliable way to diagnose it. Number 3, that overnight sleep study, the PSG, is the scientifically proven gold standard for getting an accurate answer. And finally, number 4, for kids in those high-risk groups we talked about, this test is absolutely crucial to make sure they're getting the right treatment.
So here's the bottom line. Yeah, doing a sleep study means spending a night in a lab with a bunch of wires attached. It's not the most fun night, but all the evidence confirms that it's an indispensable tool. For certain kids, it is the thing that protects their long-term health by making sure they get the right diagnosis and the right treatment.
And all this leaves us with one last big question for the future. You know, at-home sleep tests are getting pretty common for adults. But for kids, the science just isn't there yet to back them up. So you have to wonder, as technology gets better and better, will our nighttime detective ever be able to do its job from the comfort of a child's own bed? For now, the lab is still king. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.